Embers of Hope by Neon Sangetsu, Chapter 3. I'm only joking. The plan is brilliant. Actually, no, it isn't. It's guaranteed to fail, but neither of us wanted to. Isn't that the point? You're cracked. You do realize this. And you took in a small child. Blast your bloody logic. Salem and Aspen. I'm only joking. Weak. They were all weak. Salem, Watts, Hazel, the lot of them. Cinder seethed with singular fury as she stalked through the halls of Salem's tower, hands balled at her side as she struggled to control her temper. For once, she was grateful she didn't yet possess the power of the Fall Maiden. Had she managed to claim it by now, no doubt the tower would be a melted heap of slag, which would be bad for her, considering her mistress was immortal, and she most assuredly was not. Salem wouldn't take kindly to having her home brought down on her head, no matter the reason. She survived, and, well, she wouldn't. Cinder was many things, but she was a survivalist above all. She knew when to pick her battles and when to retreat. When she first saw that mewling babe in Salem's arms, nope, she'd seen the threat from the first. And what had she done? She'd noped right the hell out of there. Her allies hadn't. They'd each stood their ground in the face of that child, believing him to be harmless. Each of them were defeated. Salem had been but the first victim of this unholy menace, this great terror. Watts fell in the first year, Hazel the second. To his credit, Tyrion had lasted all of 3 years before the brat sank his claws into him. By now, well, into the 4th year, the child inevitably turned his attention to her. He'd already taken her place as Salem's new favorite. It didn't that just burn? Oh, but Cinderfall would not fall prey to him. She refused. There was a pun begging to be used there, but she refused to think of it. Yes, just like that. Well done, young master. Her ears pricked up as Tyrion's distant laughter rippled down a corridor. Aha! The foyer. So that's where they were hiding. Cinder hasted her pace, heels clicking angrily against the cold floor. She was absolutely going to cut one of them this time, though thought they could sneak off and play with that brat thing. She'd show them. A stray seer skittered into her path, and she batted it aside with one of her blades, uncaring of the pitiful squeak it gave. Ghastly thing. She'd never get used to them, just as she'd never get used to a child underfoot. It wasn't that she cared, no, not at all, but those old men were going to get the boy killed, which meant Salem would kill all of them, and now her mistress wanted to bring more children here, to the Grimlands. Playdates, she called them, all part of some fell argument with Ospen. Had everyone gone mad? She had been careful to hold her tongue for all these years, wary to give the tyke the slightest satisfaction of her attention, lest he find an opening. She failed miserably, because he knew. Somehow, the little bastard knew she was trying to ignore him, and he had made it his life goal to unravel her, with Salem's backing no less. Clever little... No, bad Cinder, evil thoughts, power, world domination. She was strong, she was mighty, she would not be undone. This child had no power over her. Ah, but there was the foyer. Vengeance was nigh. When she found the door, she slammed it open with a snarl. Tyrion Kalos, what are you doing with his this time? And nothing, dear Cinder, came the call. Just enjoying the show. To his credit, the Faunus didn't jump at her outburst because he was far too preoccupied with something else, as was everyone else in the room. At first, she didn't understand what the devil they were up to or why they were ignoring her, and ignored that Cinder was an angry Cinder. Perhaps a good smack to the head would bring some of them back to reality. She raised her arm to do just that when neither of them so much as gave her the time of day, until she saw. Whee! As ever, young Naruto was wrapped up in a grim shark onesie. Adorable little shit. Oh, she hated him. She wanted to hug him. Well, that wasn't a problem. Yes, it was. All the problems, rather. The dilemma proved to a more pressing concern because he was currently riding an Ursa around the room as though it were a horse. Even now, the latter bucked and snorted like an angry bronco as it kicked out with its legs and thrashed about. But that clever blonde bastard only grinned and clung on for dear life. Her face went ashen at the sight. Her mind rebooted once, twice, thrice. Why is he riding an Ursa? Watts shrugged. He wanted to. Naruto squealed in delight. Giddy up! Hazel wiped a proud tear from his eyes. That's my boy. No, 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 no. Salem would slaughter them if he didn't, including her. And Cinder darted forward in a scarlet streak and snatched him from its back with one arm, even as the other snapped a sword from her back and brought it down on the beast's head. Naruto didn't cry when she plucked him by the scruff of his neck, but that petulant look he gave her as his mouth dissolved, it proved payback. Payback she was more than willing to endure if it meant she got to live another day. Damn brat, was he trying to get himself killed? Did his vendetta against her go that far? Boo! Tyrion sulked. I was enjoying that. By the gods, what is wrong with you people? Nothing. Perhaps if you interacted with him more, you might agree with some of our methods. Watts offered as Naruto wriggled free from her grasp and waltzed over to play with one of his toys. The boy's quite clever for his age. I dare say he's a prodigy. Nor was he never in any danger, Brock quirked. Or have you forgotten that the Graham won't harm him? The Blackett blinked slowly. No, Watts didn't smile, but his mustache twitched. Hazel was wise enough to cover his mouth with a large forearm. Tyrion was Tyrion, far less subtle when he cackled and threw himself to the floor. Stop, damn you! With a supreme effort of will, Cinder mastered herself. Must not kill, no matter how much she might want to. Maybe someday. Still, the laughter of Tyrion grated on her nerves. Worse, Naruto had started laughing too, a soft little giggle that only a child could produce. Her fingers twitched treacherously towards him, not to rip and tear, but for another purpose entirely. Crushed her heart. She wanted to squeeze him. This was precisely why she had worked too hard to avoid him in the first place. In the past, there was just something about the boy that made her want to spoil him rotten. Frantically, she settled for the first insult she could find. He hasn't spoken any of our names yet. Cinder clicked her tongue in quiet satisfaction. Some prodigy. And our goddess is more distressed about that. Tyrion tilted merely. But not I. Oh no, for I will be victorious. Over my dead body, Watts grumbled. Elias turned to him. I'm joking, of course, he lied. For far be it from me to upset our queen. It didn't take long for Cindy to put the puzzle pieces together. She might be younger than the lot of them, but she'd like to believe her mind was sharper than these three put together. It wouldn't do to hurt their delicate feelings, of course, so she settled for a small scuff. You're betting on whose name he says first. Perhaps you should play with him yourself, Hazel offered. He's not a bad child. She risked a gaze at him. Naruto waved, and her heart gave a painful lurch. Must fight instinct. Play with him. Cinder inhaled with a sharp hiss, meant to mask her true feelings. Bah! Weak the lot of you. Look at him. She flung an incredulous finger at said boy, who gazed back at her with guiltless blue eyes. The little brat's not even five and a half. Is not even 5, and half of you are already wrapped around his little fingers. Salem swooning over him and snatching children for him to play with. Tyrion wanted to teach him to murder everything. Cinder paused for breath. Oh, but she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I see you trying to creep away over there, Watts. You gave him a math book just this morning. The genius flinched only slightly beneath her words. Hazel's already unlocked his aura, for crying out loud. Well, she drew herself up with more confidence than she felt. I, for one, will not be swayed by this little hellspawn. Senda, Naruto lips suddenly pointing in her direction. Her head snapped around with an audible crack. Did he just say my name? Watts groaned and slapped a large bundle of lien into Hazel's waiting hand. Take your damn money. Neither man batted an eyelash when Cinder bolted back to the boy's side and crushed him against her bosom. I take it back, she squealed. Best kid ever. A thought occurred to her. Then, wait, he said my name first. Where's my cut? Another bundle flew at Cinder's face, only to be nimbly snagged and stuffed into one of the many hidden pouches on her person before anyone could question its existence. Her cackle put Tyrion's to shame, of course, and any and all form of laughter made Naruto laugh, and that just made Cinder laugh all the more. Just like that, the last of her walls came crumbling down into so much dust, because just now, for a fleeting instant, she had seen something, glimpsed a familiar gleam in those baby blue eyes, one she knew all too well, if only because his triumphant smirk reminded her of herself. In a single move, he brought Watts low. How quickly you changed your tune, Hazel snorted with a knowing air, drawing a glower from Salem's resident schemer. What brought this on? Because this boy knew more than he let on. Of course he did. He'd been watching her. Perhaps he'd picked up more than she thought. Crushing him closer to her chest, Cinder began to hum softly to herself as the beginnings of a new scheme were born. I've changed my mind, she purred the words. He and I are going to get along splendidly. Previews. So when I'm older, we can get married? Cinder decided to indulge him. If you get stronger, certainly. Naruto grinned, and it was that smile that instantly set Cinder on edge and reminded her of a shark. Who did you kidnap this time? To be honest, I'm not quite sure. What's your name, child? Blake? Ah, there you are, Salem grinned. Her name's Blake. Osmond groaned. This is why we can't have nice things. Did you at least inform her parents that you intend to return her? His ex-wife turned aside awkwardly. No. It's a compliment then? Competition then? Yes, that boy is an example, a beacon of hope, if you will. What sort of hope? Ironwood hedged, dreading the answer. A drunken Osmond was a scary Osmond. The hope that we might have world peace within our lifetime, or worldwide war. I'm not certain which. And she wants him to attend Beacon. Quite not sure how I'm going to pull that miracle off. Daddy! A blonde burr cannoned into his chest. Osmond toppled backwards with a croak. I just took critical damage. Salem humbled and snatched his mug. Is that so? Then you won't be needing this. I never said that. End of chapter 3. Embers of Hope by Neon Zangetsu. Chapter 4. Black and Yellow. Where is Yang? Sweetie, just calm down. I'm sure she's around. None of that, Tai. Don't you sweetie me. Someone took my baby. Can't you just use the portal? Not to be rude, but you have a bond with her, so that should be... I tried that. Someone knocked my ass into the ocean and stole my sword. I had to fly back without it. Now get up. We're going hunting. You're a good mother, Ring. Move it, Blondie. Raven and Tai. Black and Yellow. Osmond considered himself a bulwark. Inside, he was veritable bastion of stoicism and severity, one who stood fast against any and all evils in this world. His deeds were many, his work spoken in deed and legend. In countless lives, he had worked tirelessly for the better of mankind. He destroyed villains, laid low criminal organizations who would see everything brought to ruin. He had even stepped onto the field to battle himself and laid low entire armies during the Great War to bring peace to Remnant, and then established the Huntsman Academies to maintain said peace. For years now, he'd waged a shadow war, one he was still very much in the middle of waging, with evil incarnate ensure this tenuous period of calm remained. As such, he would do anything to preserve it. No risk was too great, no sacrifice too high, so long as he was the one to make said sacrifice. Thus armed with a thermos full of coffee and his trusty cane, did Osmond depart from his craft and venture forth into the heat of darkness once more. One could never tell time in the grim lands by the sky. He still wasn't certain whether it was day or night. Time was tricky here. Piloting a bulkhead by himself was a meager feat compared to this. That aside, Salem's tower truly was a marvel of engineering, a great ghastly spire that seemed to challenge the very heavens. A flock of giant nevermore wheeled high in the sky overhead, and the landing pod afforded Osmond a closer view of them than he would have liked. He knew she had but to will it, and they would tear him limb from limb. He was strong, but not that strong. Not anymore. Not since the maidens. It was always like this, even after a number of years now. He still expected her to try something at times, and it was only her lack of action that soothed his nerves, and so the truce remained. Bracing himself, the aging headmaster ascended the stairs into the archway beyond. His bones protested every step of the way, serving as a sullen reminder of his age. If this body had grown old, how many years of life did it have left? 20? 10? Less? He didn't relish the idea of starting over again as an adolescent, much less forcing himself upon a simple soul. Thoughts for that later, he supposed. As ever, no one challenged him when he reached the 4th year. Only Hazel was bold enough to threaten him here, and he appeared to be absent today, as were Salem's other associates. Then the gods for small mercies. Taking a moment to compose himself, The immortal allowed his gaze to rove across the grand space before him. He couldn't quite call it homey just yet, but it was much improved since last year's visit. With that he could more often. Before he could see Salem and had gone to great lengths to renovate in his absence. She'd even dragged in new furniture. Quite literally, judging by the haphazard place of mismatched chairs and tables, he could still see the marks in the stone where they'd been hauled about. Hazel's doing, no doubt. That brute of a man was many a thing, but subtle he was most assuredly not. A stray seer floated by with a toy clutched in one of its many tentacles, giving him pause. Against his better judgment, Osprey prodded it with his cane, causing it to round on him as he asked a question. "I'm sorry, but have you seen—" Aha! His ears pricked up at the distant cry, followed by the sound of rapidly approaching footsteps in the distance. Noise carried here, and he heard them long before he saw their owner. It brought a smile to his face. He hadn't even announced himself yet, meaning the boy must have sensed him already. "You're back!" Some called Osmond cold, some said he cared for nothing and no one. This was something of a half-truth. It had to be him. Rather, the world had to believe that he was such. Someone else might have gotten it wrong. Yes, the world thought he held no attachment to anyone or anything. Why, to even suggest otherwise was utter nonsense and drivel, and all those lies came crumbling down the moment a blonde blur barreled into his chest. It was like being struck by a meteor head-on. If said meteor were the size of a 7-year-old boy bearing the momentum of a falling star behind him. Even with his aura up, Osmond nearly found himself propelled back out the door and into the grim lands from whence he'd come. Gods above, the boy was getting strong. Had it been that long already? Without thinking, he reached down with his free arm and held his tiger close. "Careful now," he chided. "You nearly broke my ribs that time." "Sorry, I was just excited." Bright blue eyes framed by whiskered cheeks beamed up as the boy babbled happily in his embrace. "I mean, it's already been almost a year. Guess what? I can walk on walls now." Osmond's brain rebooted. "What? Oops. Missed ya, Dad." Realizing his scuffle, Naruto buried his head deeper into Osmond's chest. "He's not lying, you know. He gave me quite the fright last week." A heart-beating familiar voice plucked at Osmond's heartstrings, and he knew who he would find when he looked up. Sure enough, Salem's pale hand graced his shoulder, her lips his cheek, and her hips brushed his cheek in passion. "It's still alive, I see. I thought you would have taken a new body by now." "Mom, ew," Naruto groaned. "I'm right here." "So you are, dear. How would you like a little brother? Or perhaps a sister?" Osmond tried to meet that retort with one of his own. He failed. Salem had that effect on you. Instead, he focused on the little things. She'd let her hair down today. She still wore that blessed black backless gown of hers, and those angry red veins had receded yet further from her face. Oh, she wasn't fully relaxed, not truly, but it was a far cry from the taut anger he'd seen in his wife eons ago. It still wasn't quite the reception he had been hoping for, and wouldn't be with Naruto in the room, but the fact that she was willing to even touch him at all without immolating his bits proved promising enough. Baby steps. Once again, the irony of the situation struck him like a slap on the face. Ex-wife, he reminded himself with a grimace, through no fault but his own. "Dad," Naruto muttered again, mistaking his silence for something else. "You okay?" Irk! And there it was, the crux of the matter. A single word laid him low. Osmond dropped his thermos and toppled backwards with a croak. "I just took critical damage." Salem strode past and swiped it before he could crash to the floor. "Is that so? Then you won't be needing this, will you?" "I never said that." "Let her have his coffee." "No, never." Osmond's cane flicked out to snatch it out of her grasp, heedless of the black look she gave him in return. Salem was dangerous enough on her own, but she was nigh on terrifying when you added caffeine into the equation. Coffee skipped with alcohol out of the question. Osmond had experienced the horror of drunken Salem once before. Once. Never again. Naruto plucked it from his hands and tossed it to his mother, who caught it, much to Osmond's great dismay. Treachery by his own flesh and blood. Well, they weren't related, but still. Salem's eyebrow all but vanished into her hair as she sipped from her stolen prize. Had she read his mind? "It's not treachery if he was loyal to me all along." Osmond shot a half-hearted glower at the boy as he leaned against the wall. "Sorry, not sorry," came the laugh. "Mom's way scarier." "Scary, am I?" Salem swept in behind him. Gah, no, let me go. Clad in dark fabric to match his mother, he'd have to get him better clothes. Young Naruto still cut a rather dashing figure, even as he squirmed in Salem's now tickling grasp. Already tall for his age, he'd grown further still since he'd seen him last. Somehow, the thought made Oz's heart hurt. He didn't see him nearly as much as he would have liked. Salem, meanwhile, draped herself across a nearby couch with a fond smile as their son continued to flail weakly in her arms. She looked almost normal as she lounged on the couch. One arm draped over Naruto as he chatted with her, softer, less angry, more relaxed than she'd been in an age. Her beautiful red eyes followed Naruto's small form with quiet delight. Nothing more. It was the same loving expression he'd seen aimed at their daughters once upon a time. But the fire, before everything changed, and they'd managed to maintain a fragile peace between them for now. Oh, they still had their plots and their schemes where Naruto was concerned. They effectively left work at the door. Salem wasn't foolish enough to walk into Ville, and while Team Stark was beginning to wonder at Osman's strange absences, they'd made it work. Somehow, there were times when he wondered about this, wondered if he had been right to leave all those years ago, to flee like a coward without speaking to her. She'd reacted the only way she knew how. Loudly. Had cooler heads prevailed, the girls might have survived. He wasn't sure what possessed Salem to take in this boy, but neither could he deny the change it had wrought in her. Sometimes subtle, sometimes overt, but change nonetheless. Had the God of Light been wrong after all? If she could take in a child and be a loving mother to him, then surely there was hope for her. Then the door crashed open and all thoughts of change vanished from Ospen's mind. I have returned, my queen. Tyrion Kalos was many things. Trustworthy was not one of them. Ospen wanted to believe that there was hope for Salem. Naruto had opened his eyes to that. Tyrion? Nope. Lots of nope. Big freaking nope sandwich. He was a madman through and through, a murderer who reveled in pain and the taking of lives. He was uncontrollable and not to be trusted. And the fact that Salem somehow commanded him, miraculous. That young Naruto had him wrapped so tightly around his little finger was surely nothing short of unholy. Hello, favorite nephew. He saw Naruto and his face lit up with childlike glee. Uncle. The boy took the opportunity to wriggle free. I'm your only nephew. And that makes you my favorite. Such was the unassumable logic of madman. You couldn't argue with it. But enough of that. I brought you a gift, as your mother commanded. Father and son exchanged a blank look. Gift? Only then did Ospen finally notice the strange black sack slung over Tyrion's shoulder. It was moving, and something in him twitched at the sight. Naruto noticed as well, and judging by his horrified expression, he'd come to the same conclusion. No, she wouldn't, surely not. Oh, who was he kidding? Salem had always been a woman of express. Yet somehow this still came as a surprise to him. He'd heard tell of children disappearing all among the coast, but not this lunacy. Least of all, when the madman plucked out a blonde girl from within the heavy sack. Ospen had time enough to glimpse dark clothes, wide amber eyes, and feline ears. Oh dear. Mom! Naruto cried, palming his face. You didn't. Mom, indeed, Ospen thought. And who might that poor girl be? No one to concern yourself with. Salem's sunny smile alarmed him enough. Just a friend for our son. Tyrion's captive snarled fiercely behind her gag, and the lunatic flashed her a black look. It is as my goddess says. None of your concern. Naruto didn't move. He all but dove at Tyrion, leaping up to grab the poor girl from his grasp before pulling her to safety. His noble efforts earned him a vicious headbutt from the girl, but he continued on undaunted. Quick as a flash, he had both her arms free, followed soon thereafter by her legs. In the next instant, he drew her aside with a rushed apology. Who did you kidnap this time? Ospen asked. Do you even know her name? Tyrion shrugged helplessly. Salem favored him with a frown, and he groaned anew. Had she not even considered that much? To be honest, I'm not quite sure. Her lips pursed as Naruto awkwardly removed the girl's gag. What's your name, child? Speak up now. Blake? Ah, there you have it. Salem preened, placing both hands in her lap as Naruto muttered something comforting to the new arrival. Her name is Blake. She'll be staying here for the foreseeable future. Let's hope she works out better than the last one. Blake squeaked. Last one? Oh yes, it was quite a disaster. The mother of all Grimm favored her with a bemused look. What was his name? Ah, Carden. That's the one. He tried to bully my boy. We had to get rid of him, you see. Nato agreed thoughtfully. Didn't end well. Of course, the poor girl misunderstood that remark in its entirety. Before the boy could explain himself, she foamed at the mouth and went limp. Nato narrowly managed to catch her and ease her to the floor before she could bash her head against something. In the same instant, he kicked out with his right leg, and his foot collided with the back of Tyrion's knee, causing the older man to yelp and clutch at his heel. "Dear nephew," he cried out, "what was that for?" "Lots of things." "Oh dear, it appears she fainted," Salem crooned with false sincerity. "Poor thing, don't worry, we'll make her comfortable here." "This," Osmond groaned, "this is why we can't have nice things. Did you at least inform her parents that you intend to return her like the rest?" Salem had returned Carden to his family, of course. Even she wasn't so foolish as to steal children and keep them indefinitely. Poor boy, he would be babbling about monsters and madmen for the rest of his life. No one would believe him. Granted, he'd never met with the Winchester's Sion in person, but he dimly recalled Naruto having a black eye once. Salem's anger had been legendary that day. "No," his ex-wife turned aside awkwardly under his piercing gaze. "Never mind that." Coughing into a fist, she looked away. "Tyrion, I instructed you to return with 2, not 1. Where is the other one?" "Other one?" Naruto squawked. "Mom, no." "Mom, yes. You need playmates." Tyrion, however, blinked and peered back into the bag. "I could have sworn there was another one in here." He frowned fretfully. "Oh dear, she must have slipped off when I wasn't looking." "Wait." Osmond paused, suddenly concerned when no immediate cry of condemnation came from Naruto. He looked left. He looked right. Where did he go? Alas, he had even less time to ponder the boy's absence before a crimson portal opened beside him. Wait, the immortal man rounded on it, eyes wide. Portal? His startled mind balked. Such a portal implied Raven's presence. Among other things, Raven meant the rest of Team Stark wasn't far behind, which meant Salem had likely taken someone important to... Oh dear, he hadn't simply miscalculated in this, he'd blundered. Badly. His brain had only just begun to comprehend his peril when the woman herself burst out of said portal and rammed her fist into his nose. "Ospin!" The man toppled backwards like a falling tree. Salem's rich laughter floated through the room as he lost consciousness. Yang Xiaolong was lost in the dark. Well, cold, dark, and alone, but mostly cold. Clad in little more than a pair of golden pajamas, she stumbled on through the halls, frightened out of her wits. She didn't even know where she was or how she'd gotten here in the first place. One moment she'd been playing outside with Ruby, and the next, a giant Nevermore swooped down on them. Like any good cousin, she'd shoved Ruby out of the way. Unfortunately, that meant the girl snatched her instead. Said bird had given her to some crazy guy, who in turn tossed her into a sack, and now... here she was. By some miracle, she'd woken alone and managed to get free of her bindings. She was just awesome like that. There had been another girl who had been, what was this, kidnapped? It felt like she'd been kidnapped. In reality, her daring feat left her stranded in a terrible tower with no way out, no recourse but to wander the halls and hope for an exit. What else could she possibly do? She wasn't strong enough. She didn't have any weapons or even a scroll to call for help. She was only 7 years old. Oh gods, never mind Summer. Mom was gonna flip. Raven would go absolutely insane. She almost wished she would be there to see it, but something told her she wasn't going to survive the next 5 minutes. Bleak red eyes stalked her from the shadows wherever she went, ever watchful and intent. Grim. She'd never seen one before, but they had to be. Why weren't they attacking her? She knew her lessons. Grim always attacked when they saw people, and these were big. Grim indeed. Bigger than her, certainly. At some unseen command, one of them tensed and lurched out of the darkness ahead of her. It saw her and sniffed, making a strange panting sound. Yang panicked. Nope. Instinct took over her, and she swatted it on the nose with all the might a child possessed. Needless to say, the Beowulf took exception to that. A giant paw swiped Yang from her feet and sent her tumbling backwards into a wall. Despite her best efforts, she felt angry tears sting at the corner of her eyes. This was it then. She was going to die here. "I'm sorry, Ruby." All at once, a harsh whistle burst through the hall. "No!" a young voice called, carrying with it the weight of a command. "Bad Beowulf! She's not for eating!" Every single grim flinched as though they had been physically struck. Even Yang wasn't immune to the sharp bark of anger. The greatest of them whined and sketched an awkward step forward, only to find itself blocked by yet another smaller blur of black. Lucius, a 10-finger swept its snout at, and this time the beast didn't retaliate. Down, I mean it. You sit right now, mister, or you won't get any treats. It was like flicking a switch. A single rebuke did more damage than she ever could and caused the creature to crash down on its hind legs with a dull thud. Just seeing it reminded Yang of her new puppy. Poor Swai, he couldn't hold a candle to this. As she looked on in disbelief, her rescuer stepped forward and seized the werewolf by its ear. Now go sit in the corner and think on what you've done, he commanded. Much to Yang's disbelief, the wolf whimpered. Actually whimpered. That settled it. She'd clearly died and gone to the afterlife, because this was not happening. Not. Don't you talk back to me, Shoo. Reluctantly, the lead werewolf slunk off, trailed on by the rest of its fellows. With them effectively dispatched, she finally found herself face to face with a boy barely a head taller than her, clad in fine black silk and combat boots. The contrast of it drew a small, hysteric chuckle from her. He saw it and frowned, blue eyes squinting as his whiskered cheeks dimpled in quiet confusion. Huh, he was blonde too. Neat. Sorry about that, he smiled sheepishly. They're a rambunctious bunch, so I'm guessing Mom had you kidnapped too? Yang blinked once, twice, thrice, again for good measure. Bah, she managed eloquently. To his credit, the young boy barely batted an eyelash at her confusion. What the hell was this? He didn't look lost, afraid, or even sane for that matter. Any child should be, but he simply tilted his head at her like a curious fox. Perhaps he was one. He certainly had the whiskered cheeks for it. He made no move to approach her or threaten her in any way, so he couldn't be that bad, right? Then again, Dad said Mom used to be bad. That was silly, of course. Mom was, well, Mom. She wasn't strange like Aunt Summer, and Yang had nothing but fond memories of her. I'll take that as a yes. Abruptly, his frown shattered into a sunny smile. Let me guess, crazy guy with a scorpion tail? A scorpion? Oh, realization dawned and Yang snapped her fingers at him. That's the one. 10 hands stabbed into his pockets. That'd be Uncle Tyrion. Sorry about him. Yang's head continued to spin. Uncle? Just like that, his expression turned sheepish. Look, I'm really sorry about this and all, but I think this is a big misunderstanding. As she looked on, he looped both arms behind his head. I think my mom kinda got the idea in her head that I was lonely, that I needed friends, I said it was important for me, for my development, or something, he added when her head bobbed in reluctant agreement. So, that's probably why this happened. Don't worry, I'll make sure she brings you back. He offered her his hand. Want to play tag in the meantime? Here, Yang balked. What about the Grim? It's fine, he shrugged. They like me. That's not normal. Normal? Naruto blinked. Neither am I. Dad keeps saying that. Are you normal? To be fair, Naruto had no way of knowing the button he just pressed. Even as a child, Yang loathed the idea of normality. Normal people were weak. Normal folk couldn't fight back. What was ordinary anyway? She had a pair of kick-ass parents and an awesome uncle and an even more awesome aunt. Her cousin could run at super speed, for crying out loud. She never wanted to be normal. Not now. Not ever. Well, no, she flailed her arms at him in a fit of pique. I'm anything but normal, Buster. I'm Yang Xiaolong, for crying out loud. I'm awesome and boop. Lilac eyes widened as Naruto swatted her on the nose. She froze. Now you're it. He bolted before she could deny it. Yang made her decision in an instant. Come back here. Previews. But it's just fish. Did you want that badly? Leg all but perked up. Why have you brought us here? My, aren't you two just precious? Well done, Tyrion. Little Winter was a credit to the Schnee name. She barely batted an eyelash in the face of this terror. Not so wise. The poor girl yelped and dove behind her sister for shelter. Salem restrained a small smile at the sight of her blatant terror. Fear was all well and good, but she hadn't dragged them to the Grimlands for the sake of terror now, had she? Oh, look, the older Schnee was glaring at her now. Such a temper, such defiance. She'd make a good bride someday for her boy. No, Bat Salem, now was not the time for such thoughts. Tempting though they were. Mom, Naruto groaned. Not again. Oh, Ruby's head poked over his shoulder. Who are they? She smiled at her favorite. Such a sweet, sensible girl, so eager to visit. Why, they're new friends. We'll return them to their home soon. You have my word. End of chapter 4.